Welcome to Spin That Back. This is Rick.
I'm Eric.
And this is our spoiler talk for Uncharted 4. At the end, the fourth and final installment, what we're guessing is going to be the final installment in the Uncharted franchise. So this is going to be one of two videos that we're going to do in honor of this being the last Uncharted game. Obviously, this one is our spoiler talk. We're going to cover the whole game. And click right here for our other video, which we're just going to talk about the Uncharted franchise games 1 through 4. Minus Golden Abyss.
Yeah,
is that what it was called?
Yeah,
Golden Abyss?
We
didn't play that one. I don't have a Vita, so sorry. We're huge Naughty Dog fans. One of, if not the best developers in the game right now, I would say. So spoiler talk from here on out. We're going to cover as much of the game as we can over the course of, about 20 hours or so that it took us to finish it. Which may sound kind of long, but I think for me, like, I kind of wanted to savor it knowing that it was the last game. I kind of wanted to and didn't want to finish it. If you haven't played it, I don't know what to tell you. Go out and enjoy it if you can. If you go through all 4 games if you can. I mean, you're really missing out if you haven't played it at this point. So where do you want to start off?
The intro action sequence was the shit. It reminded me a lot of how part 2 started, where like the derailed train. This starts like on that shipwreck that leads up to like them eventually later on getting to the island, and it just grabs your attention. There's like a huge, and I thought it was dope. Like we get a glimpse of like how like the game looks fucking amazing with like the rain and the wind and the waves and like these huge explosions. Even like the smoke looked clean, like everything. I was like, man, like this shit, it looks amazing.
Even like the new facial animations, like on the characters.
Like the detail on like in their face, like you see like the wrinkles like on their skin. It looks, the level of detail in this game is the shit, man. It looks so good.
And actually, somebody kind of pointed out, it kind of took it back to like the first Uncharted, where you start off kind of like that fight on the boat, remember, like with you and
That's
Elena?
True, yeah.
And then that jumps into the opening credits. Well, no, actually the opening credits come until later.
A little later, but those opening credits are dope.
Yeah.
And you see like the sketch drawings of like every game.
That kind of like reminded me like, oh shit, like this is going to be the last one. This is going to be like the last. So it was a little bittersweet knowing it was going to be the last one. But so I think another point that I wanted to cover was that I saw an article, I think it was on Game Informer, where they talk about like, can you enjoy part 4 without having played part 1, 2, and 3? And I mean, I guess you could realistically, but
I don't think you can.
But it's like there's certain moments that we know obviously we'll cover, but there's just certain moments that they're just not gonna hit you with the same sort of emotional impact.
No.
If you haven't played the game, if you haven't gone through 3 games already with these characters that we've come to know,
you won't get as much from it by just playing this one. Like you kind of, I think you kind of have been a fan of the series. So we start with like the flashback when it gets to them as kids, Sam and Nathan. When we find out that he's like at that Catholic fucking like boarding school or whatever, and we find out that he didn't really have his parents from a young age, so he's kind of always been on his own. And it's kind of weird when they first announced that they were gonna introduce his brother. I'm like, wait, but they never once like mentioned anything about him having a brother.
I was kind of concerned about that too.
Yeah, but
even though I still kind of had a problem with it, like the whole game, it just bugged me that like he never mentioned. Even though they try to explain it later, we'll get to that point later. I think they did it,
but honestly, like I think they did as best as they could, because we actually get, I think throughout the course of the game, like we get enough of a character development from everyone really, but just from Sam, because I mean he's like a completely new character and he's a really huge part of the story. Really, it's more a story between him and Nathan and Elena towards the end, but like I think we actually do get enough of a like emotional attachment with Sam, at least for me, because even like when we kind of get that flashback of them as kids, we kind of see like how they were really close, and then I honestly got like a little almost teary-eyed on the part, even though I already knew that he didn't die because obviously he comes back, but like that prison sequence, like when they escape.
Yeah,
and he gets shot.
He gets smoked.
I mean, obviously, we fucking know at this point that he doesn't die because he's already come back. But like, even like, I thought from that point, I was like, damn, like they actually like got me emotionally involved with this character that I didn't even really know up until this point, And I think that goes a lot to, I mean, just overall, like the animation, the voice acting, the performances from everyone, really. Like Troy Baker and Nolan North were amazing in this game. I mean, those guys are probably like the 2 best voice actors in all video games, and they fucking killed it, man. Like Nolan North was like fucking, I mean, he's always been great as Nathan Drake, but like in that moment we really get like an emotional like reaction from Nathan, like when he finds out that his brother gets killed, and he has no choice, like, oh well, I'm gonna leave, like at that point he couldn't really do anything.
Yeah, part of the problem that I think we both had when in part 3 was the beginning, because it starts off like really slow, and I think in this one, like the game starts off slow. like it's not there's not so much action until really like chapter maybe
Like,
5 or 6.
yeah, it's like a third into the game almost.
Yeah, and but this one did it felt to me like this one didn't meander as much as part 3 did, because part 3 you were just kind of like maybe you're just coming off of part 2 because it had so much action.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, come on, like I just like when are we gonna get to this shit? And it just took a really long time.
Yeah.
And this one it takes a long time too, but it didn't feel that, it didn't feel like
No.
as long of an intro. I mean, obviously it's a setup to these characters. I mean, it's the last game, so there's like a lot of story to cover.
That has a lot to do with the writing, because we got Neil Druckmann to come from. I mean, I still think The Last of Us has been Naughty Dog's best game until this point. But I mean, still, like, Uncharted's been a great series, but like we kind of get that like emotional aspect of the story from The Last of Us kind of intertwined with the characters from the Uncharted series. And I thought it worked like really fucking well. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot different, because it almost, in the way, it doesn't really feel like an Uncharted game. They just involve the actors a lot more in this one, and it just, you get like a lot more of a like an emotional attachment to the characters in this game.
Even though I know some people would beg to differ, because like I've heard some people say that Uncharted has always chosen style over substance. Like there's like the characters are kind of like one dimensional. Like they're not.
Yeah, in a way, and it's true, because even like Nathan Drake until this point, like, yeah, like I think he was always been the great character. He had a lot of personality, but we don't really get to see too much of his story and kind of like what led up to this until this one game. And they covered a lot in this one game.
Knowing that Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley were gonna take over as writers and directors, like it's pretty evident from the beginning, and especially that scene in the attic. We didn't even get to that yet. Chapter 4. That you could tell like the impact of the influence from The Last of Us like bled into this game.
Yeah,
because you can see, even, I mean, not to say that Amy Hennig, I mean she did an awesome job. I mean, she helped build Uncharted into what it is, and not to say that she wouldn't have done the same thing had she written this game. But I mean, this game couldn't have been done in the way that it did if these guys hadn't taken over. And not to say that it wouldn't have been a great game if Amy Hennig was involved.
But they would take a different approach with it.
Yeah.
And I think for it to be the last game in the series, like, I'm actually really happy that they went this route. It's a really like deep emotional story throughout, and I thought like especially for it being the final chapter in the series, like I thought it worked really, really well.
Kind of hit me more in that scene at the beginning of chapter 4 when you're in Nate's attic.
Oh yeah, that was one of the best parts of the game.
Like when he opens up that notebook and it has like the picture of him, Elena, and Sully, and then it's just like, oh man, you're just like, you realize, I mean, you've gone through 3 games with these characters, and yeah, I mean, they may be one dimensional. They're not like really like super deep characters, but you have,
love the characters.
Yeah, you have this attachment to them, and I mean, obviously being a thief's end. You don't know. I mean, who's gonna die? Is anybody gonna die at the end of this game? Obviously, you don't want to see anybody die.
Yeah.
But you're just like, oh shit! Like you've come to know these characters over so many, through all these adventures going with them, and then knowing that this is the last game. And that's partly why I think like you couldn't enjoy this game as much.
Yeah, and then we get all those Easter eggs, and like if you've jumped into this game and you see all that shit in the attic, you're gonna be like, well, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, you don't really
like
know.
You'd only appreciate it if you played the first 3 games.
And then when he goes to the gun holster and he takes out like the gun.
Yeah, you do like that little mini game. Where you start shooting the targets. Yeah, that was pretty.
Did you see the Lazarevich one? The Lazarevich one.
Yeah,
was like,
it
was like up.
It was pretty dope. Like that sequence was really dope. Like I honestly like that whole chapter. That chapter is completely like done specifically for, I think, people that have played the series up until this point. Like that chapter was made for us, for the fans of the series.
You kind of see that Nate has moved on in his life, especially after Elena gave him so much shit in part 3. You see that he's kind of like, okay, maybe I need to chill out, just become a regular guy, not the adventurous kind of guy. But you see that he can't let that go. Because even like when he grabs the gun, even like the music kind of swells up, and like he's shooting these little plastic balls, but it's just like he's like, it's like like he's in the middle of a fight. It's like he can't let that part of him, of who he is, he can't let that go. And it's stuff like that you can see the impact of The Last of Us, because that's something that we had never really seen in an Uncharted game. Little character moments like that, and I thought that was really dope to see in this one.
Eventually, it's when we get introduced to Sam and all this like shit leading up to them going for looking for Avery's treasure. And then we find out that that Nate and Sully hadn't really seen each other for a couple years, because I guess that kind of had to do with Nate settling down. Like he kind of didn't want to be a part of that.
Sully kind of like told Nate.
Yeah, he told him.
He just told him like, if you're gonna be with her, like you have to like, you have to chill the fuck out. With, like if you're gonna be with her, and if you're gonna go do your other shit, then go do your other shit. But you can't have her live that life anymore.
Yeah, they meet up in Italy. eventually they're gonna try to steal this what's that cross, right? That they were looking
Yeah,
for.
at the prison.
Yeah, and then we get introduced. That's where we get introduced to the villains of the. Well, actually, we got introduced to Rafe earlier on in the game, but we didn't really know that he was gonna be the villain until this point. It's kind of like when we start seeing it little by little. We get introduced to these completely brand new characters, Nadine and Rafe, and they're a lot different than the villains from like the first 3 games. I loved Uncharted 2, but Lazarevich was a fucking generic villain. You know, he was. I mean, he was cool, but
then it had maybe like the worst boss fight.
Yeah, it had a pretty bad boss fight. But I thought Marlowe was actually like a pretty good villain. But we get introduced to Rafe and Nadine, and they're like completely different in a way. You know, like. Because even throughout the game, and we'll kind of jump back here, but the one thing that always pissed me off about the other games is that they were to find like an artifact or a lead to like the next part that they're supposed to go to, the villain comes in and like takes it from them, or they assault. And I love that they didn't. They hardly. I think they might have only done like once in the whole game, and I love that they didn't do that because we don't really see the villains that much in the game, to be honest. Like we really get just the Nathan side of the story, and then the villains come here and there, but. I thought they worked really well. Rafe was a fucking prick. You get a glimpse of him being a dick, kind of like in the prison scene when he kills the guard.
Yeah.
And we kind of find out like, damn, this guy's kind of shady, you know. I mean, he wasn't a great villain, but I did like that they went a different route with it. And even Nadine she was just working like an associate of his, and I thought she was pretty good for the most part.
Yeah, pretty much.
But they weren't really a big part of the story, which I thought was actually pretty good.
Yeah, but you know the one thing though, like this was kind of like the reverse of what you were saying. Like now it's like they were always like ahead of Nate and Sam. You ever notice like when they were getting somewhere, like like their ships are already here, like they've already like flown in here. They're already searching here, but we're really over here.
Well, Rafe kind of already had an idea of everything, but he was just like
he was just looking in the wrong place.
He was just looking in the wrong place.
He was like Belloc on Indiana Jones.
Yeah, basically that's what he was.
Like their motivation, which didn't get revealed till later on, I thought was like they kind of just made it like a throwaway, because I was wondering like, okay, like Nadine, obviously like her and Rafe, like they don't really get along necessarily, but they work together. So now I was thinking later on, I'm like, well, why didn't she just team up with Nate and Sam? Because she tells them at some point, it's like, oh, you guys are like the better
treasure hunters.
Yeah,
she told him.
Yeah, so it's like, well, why not just team up with them instead of teaming up with Rafe?
At that point, she had already invested all this time and money with
Rafe. Well, they kind of explained that. I don't know if you caught that part. There's that one part where Nate and Elena are going up the hill when they're driving in the Jeep. And they're kind of talking about Rafe and Nadine. And I think, like, Elena just kind of says, oh, well, we've looked into, what was the name of that company that Rafe owned? Shoreline.
That was Nadine's company.
Their parents like they were like their parents were like investors in this company.
Some shit like that.
So that's why obviously like Rafe came from money.
So Rafe already has money.
Yeah, but apparently like the company was like in financial trouble. They were kind of hoping that this money would kind of help bail them out. But Elena just kind of mentions that just like as like in a random conversation, like wait, like this is kind of like a big plot point, and it's just kind of like it was just kind of like a throwaway line.
Yeah.
Like I think if we would have known their motivation exactly,
well, we find out that Nadine really just wanted the money, and Rafe kind of just wanted to. He was already tired of I guess Nate always being considered like the great treasure hunter, which actually I think that's one of the parts that I kind of wanted to see, because I know you mentioned it, how like. We know that they have like this like web of people that they know, because like they mentioned Charlie Cutter at one point, and Rafe and them, like they're all kind of like they all know each other.
Yeah.
Because like Sam was involved. Everyone knows each other. Like Sully, Sam, Chloe, Charlie Cutter. So like I wish that we would have seen more of like like what other jobs have they like kind of talked about it, or at least mentioned it a little more, because they just kind of mentioned Charlie Cutter like at one point, and Chloe's never mentioned actually in this whole game.
No, she's mentioned.
Where, bitch?
Yeah, in the attic. You didn't get.
Oh, well, the note, yeah. But
like
I mean, like in conversation, like they don't mention her. No. Yeah. But yeah, so we know that they've all kind of worked with each other, you know.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that's one part I was like, damn, like how do they like? Because even in part 3, we find out that they kind of all knew each other. There's a part on 3 when Nate mentions Charlie Cutter to Elena, and Elena's like, Charlie Cutter, like wait, what? Like they all know each other, you know? Yeah. That's like the one thing I kind of wish I would have known more about. Like wait, like what have these guys done together?
When they start making the prequels, that's when we're gonna get all that backstory.
Yeah. So then I guess that's the one thing that was Rafe's motivation. We don't really get that till the very like last part of the game. When he's kind of taunting Drake. about him being like the great fortune hunter, and that's kind of like the reason why he wanted to get this treasure was because he didn't want Nate to be remembered as being like like this great treasure hunter.
Yeah.
Which I guess
And actually, I kind of like the final boss fight in this one. Like it
Oh,
felt
it's the
it felt
best
a little
one.
more it felt a little more personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they all well, part one. What the fuck happened in
Part one wasn't that good either.
Yeah, part two.
Part two was weak.
I love part two, but that was like I think my biggest complaint with
and
part
then
two.
the one
was,
and three was alright with Talbot. It was alright, but this one was definitely I think the best one out of all of them.
It felt more personal, like out of all the other ones.
We've been talking about this game it's been the series has been known for action, and we haven't even talked about the action because it's I don't know, it's weird
because there's a lot of character development, like to start the
and in the way like really like the action took a back seat in this one. It's really more about the characters than anything, and that's where we get the sense of like these are the people that worked on The Last of Us, because it really does feel more of like an emotional game, as opposed to like a game that focuses on action and shit like that. I think that's one of the reasons why you wouldn't really get into this game if you haven't played any of the other ones,
Yeah, and then also I think for the first time ever he played as a character that wasn't Nate, right?
We get like that whole flashback of how he escaped from the prison.
Yeah.
Which that kind of comes back in the end. We find out that was all just a lie from Sam.
And you know what? And that's what I was telling you, because he and I were texting like as we were playing the game, that we're like, I kind of like something kind of like was kind of fishy about Sam's story. I don't know. I was like something. I was just like, yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know. Something told me that escape either didn't happen that way. Like I don't know, just something, because the fact that he was out of Nate's life, and especially if he was in prison, like. He didn't reach out to Nate at all and say, "Hey, I'm all right."
He mentioned that he was trying to send out some letters or some bullshit.
Yeah, but who even knows if that was even true?
Yeah, but how do you know it wasn't?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, he didn't. So he waited like 15 years to come back into Nate's life. I mean, I'm not saying that that's like a flaw in the story. I'm just saying that for him to be out of Nathan's life for that long, like it's like, I mean, obviously he had a lot to hide. There were things that he wanted to keep to himself. So I think. That's kind of like what kind of made me think like, you know what, this guy...
Yeah, but we don't know how long he's been out of prison.
This guy might not be on the up and up.
Yeah, but we don't know how long he's been out of prison.
Well, yeah, that too. But I mean, I'm not going to say that I saw the plot twist coming, but like, I was just still like, man, like something's going to like not pan out. It's going to be like a totally different story. And obviously that's what happens later on when you find out that Sam made up that whole story. I mean, he was just really, I mean, he got Rafe helped bribe him out of jail. And to get on this quest to find this treasure again, and
that was a little weird, I guess. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't have too much of a problem with it, I guess, up until like we find out that it was all a lie. Because then that kind of thing, I'm like, wait, like, well, because honestly, like, I didn't even think about it until like, wait, like he's been lying this whole time, and then we kind of get a glimpse of like, so we get like that's when the camera kind of turns to Sam, and he just kind of like, fuck, man, like I feel like an asshole now because I fucking lied to him. I lied to everyone, really.
See it, and that's why obviously there was a lot more story. There was a lot bigger gaps in between the action. It gives time, especially because you have like the optional conversations, and like even when you're running from place to place, like the characters talk with one another.
Yeah.
And especially with Nate and Sam, there's like a big chunk of the game where you play together. So like he's getting to know his brother again after being away for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like all this build up, and then when you get to that point, and then you find out that he had lied to Nathan, then I think you can't have that impact. If you didn't let the characters develop all the way that they did up to that point.
Which that's why I really like the slower pacing in this game. I think in some parts, I know you kind of had a little problem with like some parts might have been dragged on. I think a little too long.
Those are some parts I thought got a little repetitive, like the mines.
Yeah, there's a couple parts maybe. I didn't really have too much of a problem with it. Maybe a couple.
I mean it wasn't anything that ruined the game.
A couple parts here and there maybe, but overall, like I thought the slow pace really, and then plus I think one of the things that it helped because it didn't really have a lot of action sequences as much. But when he did hit, they're like, oh shit, like it kind of caught me by surprise,
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of really dope sequences that happened when like I completely didn't even expect them to happen,
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing, like if you played the first 3 games, you're like, oh, these are action games, like just like there's like little breaks in between, then bam, like a huge action sequence, a little break, and a big action sequence. Whereas this one, it's like a big action sequence and then like a really long break, and then out of nowhere, oh bam, like another fucking action sequence. And I thought the action was dope, like. I thought. I mean, I know they've done the whole convoy thing in the other games before, but this has been the best one. I think. Like it was so dope. Like the part when he's being dragged through the mud.
Yeah.
And he's like shooting the guards, and he jumps up, and then we get that whole thing when, where he has to escape out of the car, And then
Yeah.
like that, I thought that was really fucking dope. Like it was intense. Like the whole time, I had already kind of seen that footage, but even playing it the first time, I was like, God damn! Like it was so dope.
Yeah. And really, there's not like those big like set piece moments as much as like part 2 and 3, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, there's not like, I mean, obviously you have like when the clock tower falls, like when, you know, like that part talking about like when, like
Oh,
when
you know
when
what part I
tower.
should have mentioned? That part with the clock tower. That shit scared me when you remember when you're at the very bottom, and like he reached like when the whole clock tower falls apart, and then
Oh,
you reach
yeah.
the bottom, and then it gets all quiet, and then the thing slams
yeah.
down. Like, oh, that shit made me jump. I was
Yeah.
like, oh shit! Like that caught me by
Yeah.
surprise. Like I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah. This obviously has like the action more spread out. Like there are a lot smaller moments instead of these like big, huge set piece moments.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously like the car chase in Madagascar and like,
That was
you know, the
dope.
convoy. That, I mean, that was one of those big sequences. The tower, like we said. But you know, there, you don't have those moments in like in part 2 and 3 was like, oh, the part on the train or the part on the
Yeah.
airplane. You know, like when you the part through the desert. You know, you don't have those moments, but it's a lot more balanced between like, you know, obviously this had a lot more story than we'd seen, and you know, plus, you know, with a lot of, you know, more action spread out across, you know, the whole game. We've been talking a lot about the story, obviously, but even just like the gameplay, maybe like some of the new mechanics we saw, like the swinging,
Yes.
which is introduced. Well, we first saw it in the multiplayer for the beta when that came out, but it was incorporated a lot into this game, and it made for some really dope moments too.
Yeah,
it
that was
even
pretty
came
dope.
into play into that fight with Nadine when you're fighting.
Oh, that part was dope. That was
Yeah,
one of those,
like
that,
you
that,
get, like
part
you
caught me by
get
surprise.
like you get thrown out of the building, and then you kind of like jump off the side, and then you swing on the rope, and then you swing back into the building, and like, you know,
Which
like,
I think the action overall was, I thought it was directed better than any of the other games. Like I thought the action was directed just like so dope, and like that part was like really cinematic. You know, that part when you're swinging and Nadine and Sam are fighting inside of
Yeah.
the building. I thought that was really well done.
the guns I think felt even better on this
Yeah, they
one.
felt better. I
Uh,
mean, Uncharted's never really been known for like its gunplay, but I think they refined it in this one. Like it feels a lot more balanced.
Yeah, and I think even the AI hunting on a lot of the fights, it felt a little more challenging. I mean, not that the game is like really all that challenging anyway.
There was a couple of parts on part 3 that were hard as fuck on
Yeah.
the cruise ship.
Yeah.
But this one didn't really have. There's a couple moments that were a little tough, but it wasn't really. I was playing it on hard difficulty, and I didn't have that much of like trouble.
I mean, they really didn't introduce anything that we really hadn't seen before.
We don't
I mean,
get as many puzzles.
yeah, they were like way toned down on the puzzles, and the ones that were there, I mean, were pretty easy. Like I know even like in the other games that there were other puzzles where it kind of stumped me for a little bit. I mean, I figured it out eventually, but this one, I mean, I thought they were actually even kind of like too easy.
But I thought it was pretty dope how you kind of get to look through the journal entries, like go back and look through all the
Yeah,
shit. I thought that was pretty
the
cool.
journal was done a lot better
Yeah.
in this one.
And a lot of the story is told through the journal, like Avery's story and
Yeah.
all that shit. Like I thought that was pretty dope. How we can, like the story's being told through these notes and all the things that the artifacts and stuff that he finds throughout the game. Kind of covered most of the game, leading up towards the end. Cause really like the whole first maybe like 2/3 of the game are really like heavy focus on Sam and Nate, and then like the last third, it kind of shifts it over to Nate and Elena.
Yeah, that's
And-
really like the beginning of the third act is after you get that reveal when you find like it's Sam's true motive,
Yeah, and then we find out.
and then he picks up the game with Elena, and then that's
Well, we get that flashback when we
Yeah.
find out that their name was, what the fuck was their last name? I don't even remember their real name.
I forgot now, something with a W.
Ah, bitch, was an M.
Was it?
I honestly don't even fucking remember. But the point is that they
forgot.
adopted the Drake, the last name. We find out so much in these flashbacks, you know. Like
Yeah.
we get like a whole we get
We-
like a backstory
we
to like
we
their
never really
mom.
found out about their dad. I think their dad just left their mom, right?
I think. Well, I think
what
he just
happened?
kind of ditched them after she died. You know what happened?
No, they mentioned the mom more than anything. Like the dad, their dad never really gets mentioned.
Well, their dad is the
No.
one that kind of left them, you know.
Like you kind of see, you know, how Sam and Nate became who they
I think that
are.
was chapter 17. That was a really good chapter, I think. Like we had that whole flashback of them
Yeah.
going through the house and looking through all these like magazines and notes and letters, and we get like a lot of story told in that one chapter. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like we get backstory, and then that leads up to like when Nate wakes up and Elena's there.
And then Elena just happens to find him in the And there's
Yeah,
this
that
whole
was kind of
fucking
weird.
there's this whole fucking island, and she happened to find like.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know they say. I
Well, yeah,
think
you
he
don't know how
asked
long he's
her.
been there for.
I think he asked her like, "How did you find me?" And she said, "Oh, we just follow like
The
the
explosions, or the
explosions,
gunshots or whatever.
yeah, something
Yeah.
like that." I mean, you have to suspend your disbelief. I mean, to some extent with
Yeah, well,
with these games.
well, we get and then that's kind of like when the whole thing with Elena starts to play, because we get that one part earlier in the game when she goes and finds out that he's been bullshitting to her about the Malaysia
Yeah.
job or whatever, and that kind of leads into this final act when he's like apologizing, and it kind of goes back to even what happened in part 3 at one point, but like more in this one, how he's really sorry, and like a part of him, yeah, he kind of wanted to do this job or look for this treasure, but I mean, he was kind of forced in a way by his brother, you know. And Elena's kind of caught like in the middle of it, and she's kind of there to help him, you know. She's not just gonna leave him.
I think it was kind of a mix. It's like he felt pressured, obviously, to help save his brother's life, because he at that point he thought that he has a price on his head if he doesn't deliver this treasure to Alcazar, and at the same time, I think he kind of this job was like a little too boring for him, so he just kind of said, you know what, like he kind of still felt that excitement, just getting back out there and treasure hunting again, like he's done like most of his adult life.
We kind of get little by little glimpses of Elena even like liking it to a certain point, like and that's kind of like what plays into like their whole story, how like he's like, it is something that he wants to do, but he decided to leave it for her.
Yeah.
But then she kind of comes to find out that she actually missed doing that type of work too.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into like the epilogue, like at the end of the game.
Well, even Elena kind of mentions it. She says, I know that, I mean, she didn't say it at the end of part 3, but like where they left off at the end of part 3 is like, she said, we try to go from this life to another life, and she's like, we may have like overcompensated, and just try to do like the whole 9 to 5, go to work and just be home and be homebodies and be married, like be like that married couple. And she said, maybe we tried to go the other way too much, like we kind of went from one extreme to the other. And that does lead into the epilogue. We come to see at the end of the game that they've started
which
this,
reminded me a lot of The Last of Us.
Yeah,
that like introduction when we see Joel's daughter. And
yeah,
that's kind of like what you do with Nate's daughter in the very last part of the game.
Yeah, and it becomes they started that company. I think it's called DNF Fortunes.
Yeah,
and you find out that they become these these excavators. And
so it's pretty dope because it does incorporate like both sides. Like, oh, we kind of like, this is like an in between to where like, they're off doing this type of crazy shit, but they're doing it legally. To like where
they were able to take their passion and make a job out of it.
Yeah,
I thought somebody was gonna die.
Yeah, part of me was kind of like, I thought Sam was gonna die when he was like caught under that like in that after that fight or whatever. I thought they were gonna kill Sam, but then they decided not to, which I thought was a spoiler alert. If you haven't played The Last of Us, fuck you. But like the last part, like no one really dies in that game, and even when no one really died, like none of the main characters die, it still like hits you, emotionally. And I thought this was really dope how they didn't really kill off any of the characters, but I think that actually like it caused for like an even more emotional story at the end when we get to play as his daughter, and then she looks through these pictures, and then she sees like when she's a baby and like her with like, there's a picture of her and Sully. There's like a picture of like of Sully and Sam. Like we kind of find out that Sully and Sam are kind of working together now. Like they're kind of doing their own thing. Sully's old as fuck already though, man. Like how old is Sully? Cause like Sully's already old in this one, and like the girl's already, she's like in 12 or 13 at least. And maybe. And like Sully and Sam are still working. Like, damn, how old is Sully at this point? He must be old as fuck.
Yeah. So yeah, even if nobody died, like. Yeah, I mean, in some instances, that can kind of be like the easy way out. You just let all your characters live, but
I thought it worked.
I think if everybody had died, it just would have been. I mean, it would have hit emotionally, but I think the happier ending. I mean, not to sound cheesy, but the happier ending would have been to see them. Because even like I think that's part of like the theme, and even like Rafe mentions it. A couple people mention it. Is that through part 1, 2, and 3, it's like they go on these huge adventures to find treasure and wealth and fame and glory, and then at the end, it's like they're kind of left with nothing. At the end of like the treasure disappears, or like they lose it,
which happens in this one too.
Yeah,
but this actually leads to something better at the end. Which is, now that I think about it, like the ending from this and The Last of Us were like completely opposite. Like one was a happy ending, and the other one was like a really dark and like kind of twisted ending in a way. But I thought they both worked like really fucking well.
Yeah, so I think. having gone through all those games, like I think to get to the end of this one and have it make it emotionally satisfying, but yet one of the characters died. I think just would have been a little bit. That would have been more of a letdown if they had killed off one of the characters.
Yeah.
So I think for what they were going for, I think it actually worked. That finally, like, they have something to show for all their their hard work and their adventures, and like on the brink of death every fucking game. That finally, like, through all of that, they didn't end up with the. Well, I mean, they ended up with part of the treasure.
Oh,
really.
yeah, they did.
Sam actually, you find out, took off with some of the coins. So I mean, it led to something still great emotionally. I think that worked a lot well. I think
thought it worked well,
that payoff was really dope. Speaking of The Last of Us, did you catch the Easter egg? American Daughters. Did you see the poster? There was a Last of Us poster in the.
I saw no, but then there was also the comic book that Ellie reads. I think it's Savage Starlight. Is that what it's called?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah. She has that comic book.
Yeah,
that comic book. That's another like Easter egg from The Last of Us right there.
Yeah.
I thought I caught both of those. Yeah, that was pretty dope. And the whole team, I mean, overall, like just Naughty Dog in general, just a great team. But man, like the guys in charge of this whole thing, like Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley, these guys are so dope. And I really like how like they even mentioned Amy Hennig like at the end credits.
Yeah,
like,
I know,
her name,
yeah,
which I thought
I
that was really
that.
dope because she was a huge part of the series. Going back to Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann, like at this point, I'm like I kind of want to see what they're gonna do with The Last of Us because these guys are so good. Like I don't think they can really fuck it up at this point. I mean, they've already done, I think, two great games back to back.
I think I kind of don't want to. I just don't want to. If they're gonna do it, I don't think I want to see another Joel and Ellie story.
Yeah, well, me neither. But I don't know. But either way, like honestly, like I have confidence now, especially with this game. Like I'm confident with them, and like they know what the fuck they're doing. Like they're not gonna fuck it up. So.
And I think it like I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020. I mean, if the game had sucked, we would have felt differently. But we would have said, oh, they should have had Amy Hennig. Why did they kick her out? But I mean, obviously, we can say, look at it now and say, yeah, of course. I mean, they were like the right choice just because of the emotional beats that they went after and that they achieved in this game. I think it really worked. Just their storytelling ability, like the way they tell a story, kind of like what they did in The Last of Us, like really helped, I think, end this franchise and be the last game in the series. And I mean, obviously, it worked out perfectly. Mm-hmm. We've kind of been there, done that. I don't really know what else they could really do with the Uncharted franchise at this point.
And that's the thing.
So, like, this felt like the right time to end it. Like, they said, this is going to be the last one. We can't really take it anywhere else besides here. And it felt like the right time to end the series. And I'm just really glad to see it go out the way that it did. Those were obviously our thoughts as we say farewell to the Uncharted franchise. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments below, where Naughty Dog might go from here, or what you want to see from them next. Maybe a new IP coming from them, or Last of Us. And your favorite moments from the game, from the series overall. Check out our other video in our Uncharted series here. So click down in the comments below, hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.